Good afternoon and welcome to the Demolition Daily LiveStream. Before we kick off today, I just want to say a massive thank you to all of those that took part in last night's transatlantic gathering of the Demolition Social Club last night. Thankfully, the technology held up way better this time around. We all had a good chat. We covered subjects ranging from conventions and retentions to union interventions. I wrote it down, I still got it wrong. Can you believe that? We will be doing it again, so be sure to watch this space because it's proving popular and it's going to be well worth doing again. Hopefully, we'll be able to do it next week if diaries allow. Not that I'm going anywhere, but the diary is full up of people wanting to talk to us, so keep an eye out for that. I'd also like to say a big thank you to all those that watched and shared and engaged with yesterday's live stream. Someone actually hosted a Facebook watch party, which sounds brilliant. I don't actually know what it is, but it sounds brilliant. Obviously, the credit for the success and popularity of yesterday's show, as always, lies with our guest. In this case, it was Professor Steve Toombs. In the world of live streaming, I'm merely the facilitator. I am the humble cook who lays before you a sumptuous repast of the finest ingredients. And my hope is that you leave each day feeling satisfied and nourished. Of course, if you leave with indigestion or feeling mild nausea, I can only apologise and promise to offer you something that might suit your palate a little more 24 hours later. A quick point, if you're a follower of us or a user of Instagram, if you check out our profile page at demolition_news now, you'll see there's a big new green play button just below our profile or below our bio. If you hit that button, you can now look back over most of the live stream shows that we produced and preserved for posterity. Maybe one day we can all look back at them and laugh, although the way it feels at the moment, I very much doubt it. Of course, if you prefer to watch them in a big screen format, you can do that as well. Just head on over to YouTube and search for the Demolition Daily, and you'll find all of them there, all 23 episodes, I think it is now. Just one final point, and don't worry, the show proper starts any minute now. On Thursday the 30th of April, which is Thursday next week, if you're watching this live, our guest on the live stream will be Neil Edwards, CEO of market intelligence provider, the Builders Conference. Neil will be a second-time guest, our first actually. He and I will be looking at the new contract awards figures for April and discussing the outlook for demolition and the construction sectors as well. I will tell you more closer to the date, but if you do have any specific questions that you'd like to put to the man with his finger on the industry's pulse, then please get in touch in advance or make sure you're watching on Facebook live on the day so you can post your questions in the comments. Now, having bigged up the importance of guests on these shows, I must tell you we don't have one today. We had two lined up. One dropped out late last night, the other bailed on us this morning. We are trying to reschedule, but you know that is the nature of live broadcasting, unfortunately, and the way things are in the world at the moment. The fact that they've got better things to do than talk to me in the afternoon is no real surprise. Thankfully, I have something to say, which will probably come as a surprise to absolutely no one. So if the thought of me droning on for the next 10 minutes is more than you can bear, I do understand. I won't take offence if you choose to leave now. Trust me, as a journalist and as a West Ham fan, I have the skin of a rhinoceros and the emotional engagement of a robot, so I really won't take it personally. You're still here? Good. Then let's begin. Now, obviously, the rising death toll that's being attributed to the coronavirus is our greatest concern right now, and it looks likely to be that way for the foreseeable future. There is a concern for both the physical and the mental health of some of those that are the most vulnerable amongst us as well. There's a growing concern about the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the enforced lockdown that followed in its wake. Certainly, as I scan my local high street, I do wonder just how many of those locked doors will ever actually reopen. But the thing I want to talk about today is all those things that have, through necessity, been pushed back. My wife and I were scheduled to be in Venice in a few weeks' time to celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary. Quite how she's put up with me that long, frankly, is a mystery. But obviously that's clearly out of the question now. In a few months' time, I should have been going to Buxton in Derbyshire for the Hillhead exhibition, but that's shifted back a year as well. My youngest daughter, still heartbroken that the annual Glastonbury Festival will now take place in 2021. She's been a regular at the festival since I took her in 2008. Coincidentally, that's the last time I felt even remotely hip and groovy. I live just a short hop and a skip from Wimbledon. I've never actually been to the tennis myself, but I do like to have it on the TV while I'm working. That also isn't happening this year. And similarly, I know precisely nothing about athletics. But once every 4 years, my TV set is set to whichever channel is covering the Olympics. And I find myself rooting for individuals taking part in events that I didn't even know existed a few days before. Frustrating though it is, all of those things can wait. I will get to Venice at some point. I will go to Hillhead. My daughter will go to Glastonbury. And hey, who knows? I might actually go and see the tennis in person at some point. Probably not, though. I'm sure many of you are chomping at the bit to get started on a new demolition project or to get back to work to finish one that you've been forced to abandon. But what about those things that are already running inexplicably late? Like the publication of the findings into the investigations into the scaffold collapses at Reading and Nuneaton. Like the publication of the findings of the investigations into the fatalities at Great Yarmouth, at Redcar, and at Long Gannet. And without question, worst of all, the publication of the findings of the investigation into the Didcot disaster that killed 4 demolition men back in 2016. Now, I'm broadcasting this and recording this on Thursday, the 23rd of April. The boiler house at Didcot A Power Station collapsed 1,521 days ago. Now, I used Google to figure that out, but my guess is that the families of those 4 men could have told me that without even checking their calendars. Chances are they could tell me the number of hours that have elapsed since, the number of minutes, where they were when they heard the news of the disaster. And for 217 weeks, the Health and Safety Executive has been poring over a mountain of evidence in the hope of finding a smoking gun that will lead to a successful prosecution. A prosecution that will justify the millions of pounds spent in man hours while prolonging the agony of the 4 families, their friends and their colleagues. And the HSE has been conspicuous by its absence throughout the greatest health and safety crisis this nation has ever faced. My guess is that analysing bits of tangled steel recovered from the collapsed boiler house won't be particularly high on the HSE's to-do list right now either. Has it ever been? The problem now, of course, is that the HSE has an excuse, a means with which to explain away the unfathomable delays, a COVID-coloured get-out-of-jail card. With government currently preoccupied with the small matters of death prevention and propping up the National Health Service, there is no one holding the HSE's collective feet to the flame. So when 4 years become 5, or when 5 years become 6, the HSE can point to the COVID-19 outbreak and say, well, if it hadn't been for that global pandemic, excuses weren't acceptable when the investigation prevented the bodies of the 4 men from being recovered for more than 6 months. It wasn't acceptable when the investigation had dragged on for 2, 3, and then 4 years. And it sure as hell isn't acceptable now, 1,521 days after the tragedy unfolded. If you were watching yesterday, you'll know that Steve Toombs suggested that the HSE has been neutered. Although I'm inclined to agree, you might think that's a bit strong. However, the time it's taken to investigate the Didcot disaster surely suggests that the HSE is lacking impetus, that it's not being held to account, and that it's been rendered largely toothless. Now, I'm not suggesting that the HSE should follow the government lead and host daily update press conferences, but issuing a carefully worded and non-committal statement on each passing anniversary of the Didcot disaster is nothing short of a disgrace now 4 years on. It dishonours the memory of the men that were so tragically killed that day. And worst of all, it prolongs the suffering of those that were impacted most by the boiler house collapse. The families, friends and colleagues of those 4 men. For an organisation with the words health and safety in its actual name, the Health and Safety Executive has done precious little to protect the safety of demolition and construction workers during the COVID-19 outbreak. It's done even less to safeguard the mental health of those impacted by the Didcot disaster. That's the end of that part, but I'm gasping. Now, I'm very aware that I haven't yet mastered that face change that newsreaders employ when they go from a serious story to something a bit more light-hearted. I'm still new to this, so you'll just have to forgive me. Now, one thing that became very clear on last night's Demolition Social Club is this industry's ability and willingness to soldier on in the face of adversity, and in this instance, global adversity. Whether that's through some weird industry Dunkirk spirit or whether they're doing a Nero and fiddling while Rome burns, doesn't matter, and it remains to be seen. But we will get through this. We'll get through this together. And with each passing day, the end of the lockdown does draw inexorably closer. So stay strong, everyone. I'm going to give it the usual sign off. Look after yourselves, look after each other, look after your friends, your family, and your colleagues. I'll be back here again at 3 o'clock. Hopefully one of our guests will have realised that they're missing out on an opportunity to be interviewed by a master of the trade, really. And we'll have a guest for you tomorrow. I'll keep you posted. Don't forget, on next Thursday, guest will be Neil Edwards, talking about the outlook for construction and demolition activity in the coming months. So put that in your diary. Keep an eye on demolitionnews.com as well, so that we can keep you informed on the next meeting of the Demolition Social Club. But until then, look after yourselves, and I will see you again 3 o'clock tomorrow here on Facebook, or failing that, you can check it out on IGTV or on YouTube, on Demolition News, or even on LinkedIn. Take your pick, and we'll see you there. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and look after yourselves. All the best now. Cheers.